Uh-oh.
John,
Yeah,
I think we're online.
we're live. Yeah, we're live. There you go.
Oh shit! I dropped my pencil, John.
Oh, oh yeah. Sharpening numbers to start the week, eh?
Sharpen those morning numbers. Well, good good morning. Wake up and deliver. Let's get all the. Should we do a future shop for super fantastic high five?
Oh my God, yeah. The morning meetings and stuff like that.
Welcome everybody to another Wake Up and Deliver episode 38. We're end of September.
And yeah.
We're we're on our way to. Is it officially fourth quarter? October, November. No, October 1st is fourth quarter.
Yeah, October, yeah,
So
technically.
we're days away from the craziest fourth quarter I've seen, and crazy I think we'll get into in a little bit in different ways. But first, as always, we need to start off with some morning coffee, food, ideology, all the above. Get John going because he's kind of mellow right now. We gotta get him hyped up on a Monday.
Oh, you can't be fired off like the second, you're out of bed and starting
You
your
got the
day.
bubble. You're ready. You're ready to go.
People are like, what do you mean you wake up at 9 a.m.? Like, I don't, trust me.
It is literally true that you can succeed best and quickest by helping others to succeed. John, take it away.
Yeah, I think that this is pretty. LinkedIn should love this. This goes in with like all of the mantra out there with that. Like, no, I think it's true, right? I think that people are pretty put off by the, I need you for something kind of thing. And just those, cold DMs, cold sales, constant. What do people call it? Like the pitch slap or something like that. Like the something like that.
The pitch
So
slap.
I think it's true, right? I mean, just by helping people and whatever, you kind of find another common ground or a different way to interact with them.
Well, I think that segues to a lot of the conversations we were having beforehand. Is it's a lot of it's relationship driven. We've
Hmm.
always talked about that, but a lot of firms are talking about moving away bottom lines. They're putting in systems in place that take away that relationship. We're just discussing, as we do in our morning coffee ways, about AI and brokerages. And there's a lot of been, I don't know, I've seen a few messages here and there about people pushing back on companies using AI systems, where trucking companies are refusing to do business with them because they don't know who they're talking to. They don't know the value of the load. They don't have a lot of the details. They don't feel comfortable. And as soon as they feel that it's an AI individual, they're done. They're out. They don't want to deal with them. And part of that conversation was kind of, we're talking about autonomous vehicles, which I think we'll get into later. But AI is a tool that helps, and I've said this, you've said this, not a tool that supplements. If you're not using AI to help do more, I think it's a mistake. But to do the work, I think is the other way a mistake as well. And
Yeah,
I went up close up today because I feel like this is going to be an intense conversation, John.
yeah, it probably is because as we were setting up, we were on the other side of the fence for a few of these things. So I do think that's interesting though, that right, you're getting like a lot of brokers and stuff pushing back. And in some ways, don't get me wrong, like I definitely feel for like the well established transportation companies or whatever that have their sort of infrastructure and they have their institution or whatever, and then all of a sudden it's like some flashy tech comes around and being like, we don't need anyone in your office, everyone's a bot, so to speak, you know what I mean, and just everyone's going to use our platform. So I can definitely see the pushback, but I guess my question is, what do you start doing, or how long are you going to be successful when you have people like Doug McMillon? I mean, for those of you that don't know, Doug McMillon's the CEO of Walmart in general. Like, you know what I mean? What do you start doing when on the other side it's like you get a CEO that's essentially that position in the market that's like, AI is going to change every job, and essentially expecting AI with every job, to eliminate errors, to make improvements, to your point, to do more, you know what I mean, or get more done more quickly. Like that tension of just like, I'm abstaining or I'm not playing ball. I really don't think is going
I,
to work.
I don't think it's going that way. I think it's more of a, like I said, it's a tool to help do more, but not a tool to replace. So what I mean by that is, when I'm doing carrier sales, when I'm doing carrier development, I am the person that's still building that relationship. And maybe, and that's the way I envision it, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, AI is listening to my conversations. It's taking down the notes. It's setting up all the meetings. It's telling me who to contact next, who is like this company that I should be speaking with next, or these are the different routes. And it's giving me pointers. It's helping me out to have that conversation to be very concise. And it's putting that information into my system to where I can organize and have it, have the memory of it. And then me as one individual can now cover, call it, where in the past I could only do 10 trucking companies I can manage. Now I can manage 100 of them because I have this tool that's supporting me, but I'm still driving that relationship. Right now, and I agree that's where AI is taking over, where a person as a one-man show can get to that $1 million revenue a lot quicker than it was in the past. Talk to someone in brokerage, 20 years ago, how quickly does it take you to get to $1 million of brokerage? They probably would have said a hell of a long time. Today, I think there's a lot of basement guys that can have gone to $1 million on day 2 because of the way they've set themselves up, the way they have all these tools, the way they can do all these things, right? And I think that's the difference. The challenge that I think people are having is when AI supplements the conversation and it just drives to the lowest dollar, and that's what a brokerage does. A brokerage just finds the cheapest price and combines the two people. I have a load, you need a load, who can do it for the least amount possible, and I'm going to connect those two. That's where I have a personal challenge.
Well, but even then, I would say that's not. Is that really a brokerage or is that a marketplace? You know what I.
As we see it in North America, that's what we call brokerages. Brokerage's objective is to find the lowest common denominator on the run to do it, and not the best, and that's why there's a lot of guys who push back and be like, hey, that's why we don't like being called brokers and et cetera, because it becomes a dirty word. We ourselves call ourselves logistics architects, right? And that's because we architect. We are like an architect. We build the plan, put it together, and combine everybody to make magic happen, right? Yeah.
But that's what I mean. Like the concept of like that kind of work versus like, the platforms that are almost more, like I said, a transactional marketplace, where to your point, it's like, I have X, you have Y, and it's just a rate shop essentially. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe I'm just seeing it more of a distinction like than what you're saying. But like, I still think that like there's a difference between just managing a transaction and then, to your point, like building an activity plan or really understanding the nuance of like everything of a multi-step sort of distribution strategy or product movement strategy that like isn't just about like point A to point B and rate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there's certain freight that is commoditized. You and I've beat it down a lot. We talked a lot about the gig work, the final mile that's really commoditized to a certain point, and there's a lot of pushback on that. Where the value is it sustainable, and there's also that middle mile aspect of it where it's the dry freight is very commoditized at this point as well, because you fill a box, you move a box, you deliver a box, and there's not much more to it right now. But I think that's going to change in the next little bit as people get more into that specialized work and help rebuild a lot of things that people want to rebuild.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that you're going to see a lot of change and you're going to see a shift in what people needs. But so to give everyone what we were talking about and what started the
debate,
the AI conversation, was because I was talking about Kodiak. So Kodiak Robotics just went public last week or whatever, valuation of 2.5 billion after raising about 275 million. And like, it's another, like, I don't know, feather in the cap or like, reading the tea leaves, whatever you want to think about it as. Like, okay, well, autonomous trucking, like how serious, how fast, and when are we going to really see it be more mainstream? Because that's essentially the backbone of what they do. It's really like sort of autonomous trucking systems for long haul, sort of activity. And I was saying to Matt before we started, I was like, I don't know, man. I said, like, these kinds of things, I said, I wonder how fast you're going to see it, because I also piggyback this on the fact that up here, one of our largest grocers, Loblaws, it's about 60% of the grocery market in Canada, had signed a deal with Gatik for another 30 sort of autonomous vehicles about 10 days ago. So I think that it's coming sooner rather than later, especially for these. And I think it's almost going to be like an Amazon effect. And what I mean by Amazon effect is that like somebody sets the bar and somebody sets expectations or sets a new standard. And it's like, even if you don't want it or even if you don't want to follow it, the problem is, the benefit that the other people are getting. So it can only be either ignored or half matched for so long. Because example, if a company like Walmart with like a CEO like Doug McMillon, who's like way into a lot of this, cutting edge tech, decides that every DC to DC move, every full load trailer that's going to go to their mega stores, anything that's going to some kind of sortation hub is all going to be autonomous. Walmart's going to wildly benefit from. They're going to benefit wildly from that. It's going to come out on the earnings calls. Everyone's going to be cheering. The Walmart stock's going to go up. So then what happens if you're that next retailer, let's say a Target, let's say whoever, who then is feeling like, well, I got to keep up with Walmart, even though I didn't want to do this, even though this wasn't necessarily on my roadmap, I can't let these guys get that far ahead. So that's a little bit why I think that the market itself is going to
but
fall over itself.
I would argue that. I would argue that with you all day long, and then
I know.
With you. I'll give you a great example. Walmart a couple years ago was like blockchain. This is the cutting edge technology. They went all in on it and they set it up, and nobody else followed suit. Right? And they saved millions of dollars, and they're showing it on their earnings calls. Oh, look at all the money we've saved with blockchain. We're going to save all this transactional costs. Everybody, guys, money hand over fist with blockchain.
Well, if you want my real retort on that one, is because blockchain, for the most part, it became challenging because the concept was very open and like understood and acceptable. But then the problem is you still had to get everybody onto a similar kind of like network using your protocols, using your.
Yeah, they centralized it and they put
for
it
for Walmart. But how many retailers are big enough? Like how many suppliers are going to start listening? I'll listen to Walmart. I might listen to Target. I'm going to listen to Costco. At some point, that list gets a little light before they're like, nah, we're not doing any more custom integrations.
Do I see autonomous trucking between two major points, like a DC to DC on longer haul areas? Maybe, potentially, on those aspects. Do I see more so on the final mile of the store delivery? Less. There's too much foot traffic, too much anonymity on whose fault it is if it does get into an accident, right? Especially with nuclear verdicts with trucking. I can imagine a nuclear verdict on a trucking company that Walmart actually owns the proprietary system to it, or something along those lines. That goes from a $10 million lawsuit to a $1 billion lawsuit very quickly, right? And I think that's going to be a lot of the challenges when it comes to the insurance aspect of it as well. So that's why I think it's going to be. Is it going to happen eventually? Maybe. But I don't see it happening in the next 10 years at a full range scale. I think we're seeing a little bit, touching, see how people are referring to it and see how people are liking it. But there's it's not catching on as quickly as it should be, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that I think it's one of those things where it's like a snowball down a hill and a little bit slow to start, but I think it'll really take off because the reality is it starts opening up some really different ways of thinking about your network, about what you're doing. And I mean, I think the first thing anyone would need to do if you're going to make a serious push into autonomous vehicles is two things that you want to do that, you're not getting enough value out of today. Is that one, being able to really move any freight in the middle of the night or most of the way through the night or the early morning hours consistently and reliably, you know what I mean? Without having to worry about people not showing up late, blah, 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 whatever. I think that's one major one. And then the other thing is, I think that it starts to crack open make the inefficient effective kind of box. And I speak a lot of that about drones, like aerial drones. Yeah, but to me, but to just hear me out, because that one will be when it comes to simultaneous deliveries. As well as I do, you do a lot of commodity, sort of food based, which are commodities, but like food stuff. if anyone could have the choice, they would all want it at 5 a.m. or they all want it at 7 a.m. Like, you know what I mean? Like everybody wants it like to start the day early in the day, to your point, before the foot traffic and all that.
Yeah, but they don't want to congest it on the road, right? They don't want to see 1,000 robots delivering 1,000 different vendors' items, right? And that's the real nitty gritty part of it. And then going back to the autonomous vehicles, there's like different solutions that we can get to before we get to autonomous vehicle. There's platooning, which is the first truck is a driver, and then there's 3 trucks behind it that are autonomous that follow exactly what the first driver is doing to formulate a train sort of to help reduce costs because you're not paying the driver, but it's still kind of manned, and you have someone that watches 4 trucks. There's also LCVs that we don't utilize enough in Ontario. We utilize more in out west Canada, not at all in the US. You don't see any LCVs being utilized, which is 253.
I was going to say, for anyone who doesn't know, it's 2 trailers hooked together, but yeah.
Yeah, it's not a B train, it's 253s.
Right,
together.
you're right. Yeah, 2 full trailers, yeah.
And there's that extra utilization that you can. And with density networks, there's definitely better ways to go about it, right? In Australia, they do it up to 8 between long because they don't have as many trains. Trains are not, train tracks aren't utilized enough in both countries. Could you have autonomous little vehicles on the train tracks before you put them on to the roads? Like those are the things that haven't been explored, in my opinion, before we go, hey, it's gonna be trucks on the road that are autonomous.
I think
that's where I struggle. Or even boats. Why not a container ship that's autonomous?
Oh, I'm sure. I am sure there's some of these brand new boats that operate with about 10 people on there as opposed to 100.
Shit still breaks down.
Yeah, that's why they got the 10 guys. or people, I should say, but that's why there's the 10 people on there. They're all engineers or whatever. So, I don't know. I think it's just going to be interesting to see, though, because I think it's viewed a little bit as an arms race, and I think everybody is kind of trying to, crack the code super early.
There's hype, and like all things in tech, a lot of hype, a lot of misinformation, a lot of faltering, and then the truth really comes out in the end. Like, what was this AI company a few weeks ago or months ago? I said they cracked the nut on AI, and it was just 100 guys in an office that were coding nonstop.
The company from India there.
Yeah. I didn't want to name countries, but
well, it was only because if someone Googles it. But I mean, yeah, it was a company that was blowing up and stuff like that, and it turned out they just had a ton of people
just doing it, right? So there's these hypes and these things that happen, and it will turn people away. And we're going to segue into the topic that you had in mind is we're going to see how quickly people rely on the final mile aspect. When in Canada we have another post-strike.
It was a rapid strike. It was a rapid response strike, actually.
Yeah, and I think people are fatigued, and on both sides. And I don't think the public's going to be behind it. So they're going to be like, we don't need the mail. Like it's fine. Like we'll survive without this service, right? And I think if it was like 5-6 years ago, it would have been true. And now there's a whole bunch of other alternate abilities to get that same product out there. And people are willing to pay for it now, to an extent.
Yeah,
which is funny because if we paid for Canada Post, maybe it would be profitable, right? But it's a different service idea behind it, right? So,
Canada Post. I saw something in the news the other day after like sort of Mark Carney had like made some statements, and he's like, listen. It's like super straightforward, right? Like the business can't sustain itself. It has an infrastructure and a network design and network headcount to process 5.5 billion letters a year. And it's like they're processing less than half of that. So it's just, he's like, the math will never math, guys. Like, you know what I mean? He's like, it's just, and that's true because it's like, if you think about any manufacturer, if you think about any sort of, even a transportation load or whatever, the reality is that nobody is usually making money at 45% of the capacity. Of course, you want to try and get there. If you're doing really well, you'll leave yourself a good gap. Maybe you start really hitting your gravy at 70, 75, 80. But nobody's making all of their money at like sub 50% utilization of their assets.
Yeah, I mean I think there is a great example of something that could be autonomized. Drones delivering mail. Like you don't need the people delivering the mail there. for the most part. Like, you know what I mean? Especially to rural areas or further out spots where that's where it costs the most money, especially in Canada. That could be a lot more autonomized in different ways and deliveries, because it's not big and bulky. It's usually, for the most part, Canada Post delivers letters. That's an autonomized area that should be explored more than I think that middle mile aspect.
Yeah, and for anyone that's like not like obviously up on sort of Canadian happenings, basically our National Postal Service went on strike very abruptly last Thursday after the government announced that, listen, we're not supporting this anymore. You guys are going to lose $1.5 billion this year. You've lost billions of dollars over the last 4 or 5 years, and changes have to be made. And they kind of allowed for closing of some post offices. They made allowed for some other types of changes, and in response, the union immediately went on strike. Personally, I think there's a few things. One, I feel super bad for the actual postal workers, because I feel that the union has led them down like a really bad path, because to your point, I don't think they're going to have a lot of mainstream consumer support. The biggest areas of impact and the communities, unfortunately, that are hit the hardest by a Canada Post work stoppage are rural and remote communities, especially. And
which have the least representation.
Well, I was going to say they have the least representation, but I mean, the reality is from a business perspective, and anyone that's willing to pay Canada Post to do something, like those markets, just they don't have the weight of like problems. I mean, you know what I mean? Like if you all of a sudden can't do stuff in Toronto or Vancouver or Montreal, you got problems. But it's like you're talking about not being able to do something in like Prince George, or you're talking about not being able to do something in like was it Dryden or something, like these really remote communities.
Get a Knockway or St. John, not even St. John's, but somewhere on the Rock. But
yeah,
at the same time, these are usually the communities that have less access, funny enough, to the internet as well, right? And then where all of us take it for granted, where it's paperless, most of these places still require the bills to come on paper, because they don't have the same access. Not that they don't want to, it's the same access. But like I told John beforehand, Canada Post going on strike, it's like, again. And I think most people feel that way. And that's the struggle I think they're going to have with everybody.
Yeah, and I said this, like, imagine they were at this place last year in November or something like that, and it proved nothing. I said that the unfortunate thing I think is going to happen is that it's like it's a bad catch-22, because it's like, oh, we're not making out, the workers and the union want X. It's like the corporation's like, oh, we're not making enough money, we can't do it. They go on strike, they essentially stop their revenue stream, so now they're in a worse position. And then unfortunately, to your point, because of all the other alternative services that are out there these days, right, and alternative mechanisms, people either look for alternatives, and then even if everything gets resolved, and even if the union got the most sweetheart deal that they ever wanted, now all of a sudden the corporation has to go and buy the business back, which means that it just creates the same problem again right away, because now their revenue is even lower than what it should have been, because they've had to discount even more.
Yeah, I'm curious how many outward salespeople Canada Post utilizes compared to another company that's the same size.
I don't know. I don't think that they're overly sales heavy. I think that they're overly management heavy and network management heavy.
Well, that's my point, right? If they actually sold their services, could they be in a better position, right?
I don't know, though. I mean, I think for the most part, like a lot. I mean, I think unfortunately the challenge for Canada Post is that they've become like the de facto large scale low cost option, right? Like kind of like USPS in the States, whether it's parcel or whatever, people kind of go with them. If it's mail, of course, and if it's parcel or some kind of package, they'll do it because it's the cheapest. They're not really concerned about the speed, it just has to get there and bump along or whatever. So I think that's super unfortunate for them.
I got a good one. So I'm going to segue, but the same topic, but let's segue a little bit different. I wanted your take on it. So on Friday, we had a scenario where there was some sort of incorrect labeling for one of our products that we were hauling, and we needed emergency labels to be overnighted. And we used one of the bigger three overnight services. I'm not going to name names because I followed John's rhetoric of being proper on that aspect of it.
Yeah, we can't name names.
So we overnight this thing, right? And it's very important because the trucker's waiting for it, needs to cross the border. It's government official, proper documentation, all that kind of jazz, and you pay the extra money, you pay the ridiculous sum amount, and it doesn't show up on Saturday. So it says it's out. It's gonna be there before noon. First it was like be there before 10. Current location was still at origin, and it's gonna be there before 10. I checked back, and it's gonna be there before noon. It's gonna be there before the end of the day. Next day, Sunday, all of a sudden says, you know what? It's somewhere else. It's now in like Memphis. We think it's there. I think we think it checked in at that time. We think it's gonna get delivered by the end of the day. Next thing I check, it's like, yeah, it's still sitting in Memphis. We think it's there since yesterday. We're not sure. We're hoping it'll be there by tomorrow. I don't think there's going to be a refund on that at all. That overnight has been delivered.
You'll get a refund, but they wouldn't do it automatically, but you can make the claim.
Yeah, but it's like the process is so like disingenuous in itself. Like it's instant. You didn't deliver, but at the same token, you deliver 10 minutes late into one of the bigger retailers. That fine, it's just instant, right?
Oh my God, they're sitting there. They're watching the clock. It rolls over. You're like, oh, you're 2 seconds late.
Time to collect, buddy. And that's one of the bigger revenue generators. What I kind of was laughing at this is you have these bigger couriers who still lose, quote unquote, the mail. Even though it's like high priority, high value, it has to be high touch, and they have the billion-dollar infrastructure, and they still can get the basics right sometimes, right? So
yeah,
I found that very interesting.
I think that has a lot to do with the fact that there's still quite a big human component to all of these things, and something goes left when it should go right. By you mentioning some geography, I think I know who you used, but. And I was actually going to post a video of, we won't name the carrier, but another one of the big three that might also have a major hub around that part of the country, delivering a package. And it was so funny to see, because this is, okay, fair enough to your point, because I know some people give me a hard time because they're like, oh, John, you're always against the gig workers. I'm like, I'm not against the gig workers. I'm just saying it's harder to maintain your quality and your reliability. That's all. But then, so here's this guy from a very well-established courier, and he's got like a bigger box from a customer. And, these days you just got to appreciate, you're probably on camera all the time. Like just all the time, especially when you're going up to someone's house. And this guy's like rocking it back and forth, like really heavy, this big box. It was a bigger box, don't get me wrong, but I know they charge more for it, so suck it up. And he's like moving it. And then he gets towards the front door and just like pushes it over. And it like just lands there. And he leaves it like half on the step, half on the grass, like just sitting there. And then the funniest thing is that on this Ring video from the the person who was receiving this delivery, you just see him casually break out his handheld. Like you see the flashing of it reading the barcode, like delivered. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, my man, you somersaulted this thing up to the guy's door.
Hey, what's the rule? If it's above 40 pounds, there should be 2 people hauling it, and they didn't send the second person.
They never send the second people. I don't think it was probably over 40 pounds per se. I think it was more awkward package.
This guy wobbling around, I don't know. It sounds like
it was a big box. Like, don't get me wrong, physically, like it was an oversized box. Like it was way, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like way too big. And sometimes that just makes it harder. It's not even the weight. It's just that, you go to pick it up.
Of the mass.
Yeah. Or you go to pick it up and all of a sudden you're like like a kite surfer or whatever. You're just getting like cooked from this thing. So I don't know. Either way, I thought that was funny just because of the fact that that you're mentioning it. And I still think that that's the challenge, is that, and I think that's one of the biggest things about logistics versus, some of these other things, or when you think about transportation and delivery as opposed to warehousing, big difference, because warehousing, manufacturing as well, you're working within 4 walls. You have a lot of control over the environment. And I don't think often people really accept the fact that so much of the stuff that happens well is because it's designed so that you can't mess it up. Like, guards and cages and overrides, and you can bounce around like a pinball, but like it's going that way. Whereas when you're talking about transportation, you're talking about delivery, you lose control of the environment. And that was one thing that I always found was kind of a bit appealing to doing a lot of that work, was that it was harder. It was harder to do it well and hard to do it consistently because of the fact that you're essentially operating in an environment you don't control.
On that note, because we're at time and we're conscious of your guys' time,
Well, always
like this
appointment times.
It's priority to be on time, in and out, like a warehouse. We don't want to get charged accessorials on this stuff. It's not one of those times. On that note, I think those are John's final thoughts for the week, unless he has something to drop to it.
No, that was pretty good. I like that. I ended up pretty good.
He's good with it. Everybody, he's good with that. So on that note, as always, we love your comments. We always see them. We always try to get to them as soon as we see them. It takes us a little bit of time.
Hold on though. We're gonna ask everybody. You drop your side on the autonomous trucking, like Team Matt or Team John. Like, you know, where's the autonomous trucking going? Watch out, you're gonna get all the fanfare because everyone's gonna be like, nah, just like people in trucks for life.
People in trucks. Well, I mean, it's the same reason that Walmart's going back to having cashiers.
Oh, that's for theft. That's just for theft.
You don't think autonomous trucks are gonna be a lot easier to hygiene?
Just like roll a Cabbage Patch Kid out into the road and like it stops.
I've watched Fast and Furious 1. The guy goes in front of it. He's gonna hack it this time instead. He's gonna pull it over and he's gonna have a picture of a family getting run. No, sorry, let me rephrase that. I have a picture of something happening and it won't never know what it is because it was hacked. What are you gonna do?
God.
On that note, we're gonna edit that. We can't. We're live. We can't even edit this.
We can't edit these videos. No. We can edit it after, I guess, for YouTube. That would be it.
Maybe. On that note, before I say too much, have a great day. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.